Hello, and welcome to the first YMS podcast, where we talk all things automotive and motorsport. With me, your host Yasin. In this episode, we'll be talking Ferrari, the manufacturer that invokes passion, emotion, and mystique amongst petrolheads all over the world. And in this podcast, you'll be joined by YouTuber and up-and-coming journalist Yousuf from Ashraf from Cars. Yusuf's work has featured on Drive Nation magazine, and he was runner-up in Haggerty UK's Young Motoring Writers competition. Yousuf, thank you for joining me. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, man. It's looking forward to it. Going to be good. We've got lots of stories to share, lots of passion, and there's no better place to start with that than Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about doing this for a while, so let's get on with it. Congratulations, first of all, on your runner-up in Haggerty's UK's competition, and also your work being featured on Drive Nation magazine. So fantastic job. Well done.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, that was really, really good to see, because I've always been a fan of Drive Nation, and Andrew Frankel, the guy who runs it, he's a top UK journalist. He's the first guy to test the McLaren F1 as a journalist, and yeah, popped him an email asking if I could go on the site, and he let me write something. So that was really, really cool. Really buzzing after that. So yeah, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. And doesn't Frankel own just a side note, he owns a 750 Monza, Ferrari 750 Monza. Do you think? I think he does.
I'm not sure he does. I think he usually runs around in press cars, and he's got a small fleet of classics. He's got a 205 GTI, which is just coming up for sale. Actually, I'm collecting cars today. It's ending. He's got a Fiat 500, a classic one. He's got a 2CV, and he's got, I think he's got a couple of other cars. I'm not sure if he's got a Monza, but
I'll double check that.
If he does,
I'll double check that and leave it somewhere in underneath. But anyway, let's get started with Ferrari, because that's what we're here to talk about. And I could talk Ferrari for more than an hour. I mean, I could talk about it all week. So let's do what we can do. And Ferrari is one of the greatest manufacturers. In my opinion, it is the greatest manufacturer in the world when it comes to sports cars or supercars. And nothing exemplifies that than the modern SF90 Stradale. I think that car has rewritten the supercar sports car market in the same way that Enzo Ferrari rewrote the sports car or the racing car with the 125S with the V12 engine, Colombo V12, when they first started off. It's almost like it's come around full circle. They continue to dominate, be the headline manufacturer when it comes to this sector. What's your opinion on Ferrari, and why do you think, or if you do think they are great when it comes to making cars? They survived 70 years. People have come and gone. People have challenged them, like Lamborghini and so on, but they always seem to be on top. What's your take on this?
So I think with Ferrari, there are a few ingredients that they get like perfectly right. Well, not perfectly always throughout their history, but at the moment, I think they're pretty much bang on. Where other manufacturers will get one thing right but miss something else. So those three things to me are car performance, capability. So the performance of the cars, the circuit performance with the SF90, as you said, 1,000 horsepower, four-wheel drive, hybrid drive as well, as fast as the hypercars from 5 years ago. So they got that nailed down. And they've also got obviously the motorsport history, such a rich motorsport history, more than any other brand, arguably.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about the current state of the Formula One team, which is laughable, and I don't want to cry about it. So let's not talk. We could leave that for another episode. But I mean, their history, not just in Formula One, but also in Le Mans, they're the third highest overall winner. So the sports car history is absolutely amazing. I mean, the 250 series of cars that kind of almost put Ferrari on the global map when it comes to sports cars and road cars, because they were basically road cars that were racing cars. They kept winning world championships, multiple world championships. I think in 1 year they won like 2/3 of all the championships, that sports car manufacturer championships are available with the 250 series of cars. So they've always been there. And the SF90, they seem to be, this car has come along and just completely wiped the floor with everyone. I think it shocked everyone. But it's not just this car as well. It's their SP Monza, which is their Icona series cars, which again looks fantastic. And they've done something different to other manufacturers, where Aston Martin and Jaguar are doing what you call continuation cars, where they're basically just recreating their old cars, which were not road legal, but they're basically the DB5 and the D-Type. Those were basically remade. Ferrari thought we can be inspired by this, but make a new car inspired by the older cars. So it's a 812 and underneath, and with a new body on top, inspired by the older cars. So I think that again shows fresh thinking. Nobody else thought of doing that. So
that's the thing. I think to make a great car, you have to obviously draw from your heritage and your past, your greatest cars from the past. But the thing is, I think Ferrari, like they show a confidence these days in making this Icona series and making something drastically different but modern looking that somehow does draw from the older cars, whereas other manufacturers you find like like Jag and Aston Martin, you got the XKSS and stuff like that, the DB4 continuations. That is just directly milking their past, in my opinion, because a car that's not road legal and costs like what, 3 million pounds. That is a classic. It doesn't really make much sense to me. Part of the joy of these cars is using them on the road, and Ferrari I think have nailed that balance there with a modern car, a crisp, modern, fresh car that also draws from their past. So doing really well.
It's rumored, I think they're going to do an F40 Icona and a 250 GTO Icona as well. I think it's going to be those are going to be insane.
That is going to be cool.
I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait to see those two cars. I think those are going to be really cool. But Ferrari brought all their design work in-house. I think it was in 2012. The F12 was the last Pininfarina design car, and a lot of people were, but they're not too sure about it. Some people even criticized it. And but I think with the recent cars that they produced, from the Pista, the F12 TDF, which I think was an in-house Pininfarina design, as well as the Roma, which I think looks absolutely stunning, and the Monza itself, I think they kind of put those doubts to bed, really, because their in-house designs are being really good. Even the Portofino looks great. I mean, when that came out, people loved it. So they seem to be on a crest of a wave, really, when it comes to design. And also when it comes to performance, one of the things I learned recently is that Ferrari are not going to be chasing ultimate lap time and also ultimate aero efficiency. So they're going to be looking at the way the design will play a part, and in terms of aesthetics, the way the car looks will be important, and the aero tunnel will not be the ultimate decider to a car design, which I think is great. And also when it comes to lap times, they're not chasing ultimate lap times. You don't see Ferrari releasing Nürburgring lap times and stuff like that. So I think that's
really good to hear for me, because I mean, as a road car manufacturer, when you start testing a car, trying to find like chip away tenths and seconds on a circuit, the setup that you'll end up with just won't be very nice for the road. I mean, it's fine for bragging rights, saying, "Oh, I can do a 656 at the ring," but I mean, the car that you'll end up with on the road just usually won't be very pleasant. So I think just focus on the things that matter as a road car. So that's styling, design, and suppleness, and just making it nice to use on the road. That's what's important. So it's good to see. Well, in the future, at least, if Ferrari do end up going down this road, because at the moment cars are just going crazy, aren't they, with performance? I mean, you got McLaren with the ballistic cars coming out, the 765 LT and stuff, and it's just getting a bit crazy. I think it'd be nice to step back from that power and performance race and make cars that are actually nice and enjoyable on the road.
Also, let's face it, we cannot exploit, as normal drivers. I mean, I'm not Michael Schumacher or Sebastian Vettel or Lewis Hamilton. We are not going to be able to exploit all that power on the road. You know, especially if you're living in Britain, the B roads are pretty rubbish, and the motorways are like fascist. I don't want to get too political, but you know, you can't drive more than 50 miles an hour on the motorway, or 70 if you're lucky. You end up with getting speeding tickets and points with your license, which could end up being taken away. So that's not realistic. I mean, you want a car that performs well, but at the same time you can exploit the power. So I think obviously Ferrari are not going to be making cars like Lotus, but they are going to be they're not after. I don't think they're after the ultimate lap time. That's why the Ferrari lap times were never released. Some people could criticize, saying that, well, they knew they couldn't beat Porsche's 918 figures and McLaren's figures, but I think if they were after the ultimate lap time, they would not be producing V12 engine cars, because V12 engine cars are not the best round track.
Exactly.
It's
and
Ferrari.
For me as well, on this subject, is that you've got these people chasing lap times with £1 or £2 million cars. You could buy a top spec Radical for like 150 grand, and you would smoke anything that like a production manufacturer could put out. You just put some slicks on it and away you go. You'd batter anything. So I never really understand this obsession with lap times with these super hyper expensive road cars, because let's face it, not many people are going to take a LaFerrari or a P1 on a track day, are they? I mean, I haven't seen it. I'm sure there's some rich ballers out there who do go to Monza in their LaFerrari, but yeah, I just
you're not gonna risk a £2.5 million car around a track.
Exactly. I mean, did you see that video of a GT2 RS clouting into a Huayra?
Oh yeah, it literally
it
wrecked the whole.
point,
I mean, destroyed. I mean, that car. I don't know how many. It probably cost more than $1 million now to fix that car. I mean, the carbon on on a car like that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to the V12 question. I mean, one of the things I learned recently whilst reading Road Rat magazine. I don't know if you read that. There was a feature on this one-off special type cars, and one of the things they mentioned is that Ferrari pretty much make no money on a V12 car, front engine car, because the development cost and the cost of actually making the engine and the car itself is so high, they actually make a loss on each unit. So the fact that Ferrari has this passion for front engine V12 cars and they're still making a loss on each one shows that they're doing it not just for the money, they're doing it because it's part of their heritage and the fact they love these cars, they love the front engine V12 cars. And so I think that's also makes Ferrari separate from, say, Porsche or McLaren, where they do chase, I think, as much as they can from their cars, try to get as much money out of it, where the accountants kind of rule the roost, especially with McLaren, where the same engine is constantly being used. It's a bit of a joke, really.
That is a joke, because like when you look at Ferrari, you've got such a breadth of cars and a breadth of layouts and engines. I'm not a fan of all of them. I do like the SF90. I think that's an amazing performer, and it moves the game on in terms of the amount of performance you get for the price. But the styling, I'm not 100% sure yet, especially from the rear. It looks a bit fussy to me. But
just to go on the styling, I've actually seen that car twice now. I've seen a red one.
I haven't seen it yet, to be fair, but from pictures at least.
Yeah, I've seen a red one, and I've seen a visual gray, basically a gray colored car, which is the Assetto Fiorano version, the lightweight more track focused version with the carbon wheels and everything. I have to say, for me, red on Ferraris generally is not my favorite color. I think Ferraris tend to look better, even whether it's a GT car or a mid-engine car. I think they look better in other colors, whether it's yellow or blue or black and so on. So red doesn't look that good on the SF90 Stradale, but it does look good in gray, and it looks better in person as a car generally in person than it does in pictures. So I think you need to wait and see what it looks like in pictures, in person. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised on the way that it looks. I liked it a lot. I was lucky enough to sit in it as well. So the new interior looks great.
Were you tempted to do a burnout outside the garage or not?
Yeah, I mean, the car was in the Ferrari showroom, so it was pretty.
All right.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to sit in it and just like look at it. It was a show car, so it was like a pre-production car, but you could go and take a look around and and I know people at Ferrari, so they let me sit in it, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, and they opened up everything. The engine is so deep inside and so low. It's not like the previous for V8 mid-engine cars where the engines you can actually see it. You need to really look down and see the engine. It's not. You can still see the red block, but it's quite deep down. I think the center of gravity is quite low in that car. But yeah, it's nice to see a new interior in Ferrari for once, and the design is nicer in person than it is in pictures. Okay. I personally didn't like it
until I see it in person. Yeah. But at least the Roma I really like. I think it's just a really refreshing design in an age where we've got like the BMW X7 with a 20-foot grille at the front. It's so nice to see a manufacturer just going for like a pebble smooth, simple design. I bet in person that is going to look really nice. Really excited to see that one.
Yeah, I mean, this brings us back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, where Ferrari are not chasing ultimate performance around the corner. This car, the Roma, apparently only generates 95 kilos of downforce, which is nothing in sports car. I mean, that it's nothing. It's just basically the car is designed just to go, you drive along, you enjoy the driving. It's not about out and out performance around the corner. It's a GT car, and it's a nice place to be. So again, it brings us back to what we were talking earlier. Ferrari are looking at things slightly differently, and I think that's working within the market. I mean, there's nobody else doing a car like that where they're not chasing lap time again. They're not chasing round the corner speed and downforce. It's just a nice looking car to look at visually. They've got one little wing that pops up after a certain miles an hour, and you can't actually adjust it internally within the cockpit. It does it automatically, so you can't show off with it if you want to show off with the wing. So it's an interesting take, and I think it's going to work. I think that car is going to attract new buyers, and it's going to increase their market share within the sports car GT series of cars.
Yeah, so on this subject as well, I think that again it's that variation in the range that if you look at a McLaren, you've got the Sports Series 540C, 570, all the way up to the Senna and the Speedtail and crazy cars like that. The basic block is pretty much the same now, on the engine, twin turbo V8, and it's just not special enough to me. If you're spending over £1 million on a car and the engine is derived from a £150,000 coupe that you make, I just don't think that makes any sense. When you've got Ferrari who've got a singing amazing V12, and you cannot compare the two. I mean, performance wise, they're going to be similar. Obviously, you've got the punch from the turbos of the McLaren, but when you hear that V12, the speed at which it spins up, the response, that is just pure theatre, and you can't match that with a twin turbocharged car or a car that's quick. It's not really about that. It's about the experience, and a V12 I think is just unmatched for a road car. As you said, on track they're not ideal. They can be a bit heavy. They can be a bit spiky as well if it's a mid-engine car, but on the road, none of that really matters. And V12 is just something else. And that's something that Ferrari holds over the competition, I think.
And that's something going back to day one. I mean, when Enzo was decided to create Ferraris on his own, before that he was obviously working with Alfa Romeo, making Grand Prix cars. But when he decided to manufacture cars, he decided on a V12, which was completely radical, by the way. Prior to that, V12 engines were only really used in luxury cars because there was just smoother. It's a smoother engine, and it's nice. But Enzo chose this engine because it was the revvability of it, the smoothness of it, the drivability of it. And it was the first time a sports car or a race car used a V12 engine, and since then it's become his hallmark. And he was actually inspired by Cadillac. Believe it or not, he liked the sound of the Cadillac engine, so he said that this is what I want to use in my car. So so I mean, completely from a luxury engine, he used that inspiration, went on to become the Grand Prix racing cars and their sports cars and race cars in general and their road cars. As we all know, Ferrari were not.
Sounds like an F12, but
Sorry, say that again.
I said I'd love to hear a Cadillac that sounds like an F12 today.
I think Cadillac was like that as well, considering. But I don't know. Do they still make cars? I don't know.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, over in the US, they got like the CTSV, the ATSV, which are quite.
You're right.
Quite good performers actually.
Yeah,
apologies today. We're focusing on Ferrari.
Yeah, apologies to my American viewers. I think I've got some. It's like I don't really know a lot about American cars, so apologies there. I'm more European focused. Living in Europe, and I think Europe also makes the best cars, but that's a side issue. But yeah, so that's where it comes from. And Colombo, who was actually behind, who he hired as well to make these engines. That engine, the V12, the original V12, was in production right through to the Daytona. So can you pretty much the same block, and they dominated sports car racing with that engine. It's stunning. I mean, how they did that before they moved to the flat. What is often referred to as a flat six or a boxer engine, which is not really a boxer engine, but that's a different issue. We can get more Anaraki if you want to, but that the boxer engine that replaced the Daytona of the 512 and so on, that wasn't really a boxer engine. It was just the BB stood for wasn't it Brigitte Bardot? That's it. It was a model or an actress. I don't know which she was, but that's what they named after, the BB. That's what it stands for.
It's a 180-degree V12, isn't it?
Yeah, really? Exactly. Yeah. Because of the way the pistons move, it's not done as a boxer. It's still a V12. It's just 180 degrees. Yeah. But I don't want to bore people with too much. Yeah.
Oh
Let's
no.
not let's not bore too people with too much about onion talk, just in case we lose our, the audience at this point. But we can
Yeah,
get
we're talking about
Anunnaki people like
funerals
that. Just yeah.
and firing orders and stuff.
I mean, if
Yeah.
people want to hear about that, they should let us know down in the
Yeah,
comments
let us
how
know.
Anunnaki they want to go. But I would love to talk about this stuff, but I know that not everybody likes this kind of stuff because
Yeah,
let's,
yeah,
let's keep it let's keep it on point with modern cars and then go to the classics as and when we can refer to them.
yeah.
Because, like you said, the V12 is their go-to um,
Mm.
to engine. That's why even when the limited series production cars, or what people call the hypercars, when they first started off with the V8 engine, Luca de Montezemolo switched it to a V12 with the F50. He said that the hyper, the ultimate Ferrari, must have a V12 engine.
Yeah.
So the F50, which personally is one of my favorite Ferraris from the limited series cars or the hypercars, is because it's an open engine, open roof car. It's got a Formula One and sports car derived engine. People forget that the engine in an F50 is not just based on a Formula One car, but the 333 SP car, which was sports car, which was the only Ferrari to be winning races on a regular basis in the mid 90s, was also based on that. So it basically is a thoroughbred racing engine,
Yeah.
race winning engine in that car. So
Yeah. You
it's
got
a
people
very
trying that today, haven't you? You got the AMG one and stuff like that, trying to put a Formula car engine in a road car. And that you've seen how difficult it's been for them. I mean, to get that to idle properly, to get it to run properly, rebuild every 30,000 miles or so. A Ferrari doing it back in the 90s. Obviously, it's a lot easier then. You haven't got all the hybrid gubbins and stuff. But yeah, it's a formula that it's sort of elusive, isn't it? The idea of an F1 engine or an F1 block in a road car just sounds like heaven. But it's only satisfying if you can actually pull it off, and Ferrari were able to do that, which is great to see. One of the greats, the F50. I really love it. Styling wise, yeah, I think F40 is the one for me. But in terms of driving, from what I've heard and what I've seen, the F50 on the road with that gearbox, that motor, an open top as well, if you want it, that just sounds like driving heaven to me.
yeah.
So
For me,
yeah,
it's one of my favorite cars. I mean, it's something that is. I'm glad that Ferrari are doing it again with the La Ferrari Aperto, which again is an open top V12 car, which I'm surprised they didn't do it with other cars. I think with the Enzo, they struggled with the structural rigidity of the car, with the A pillars and so on.
yeah,
So they couldn't get it the way they wanted it. From what I've read, the Enzo they wanted it to be a little bit more curvy on the roof and the A pillars, but because of they couldn't get the rigidity and the crash testing that you need to go through at that time, they couldn't get it as curvy as they want. So that car was actually quite draggy as well. So, and the reason why it was draggy, there's a lot of drag on that car, is because they couldn't get the pillars right the way they
right.
originally envisioned the car to be. So,
Is
but
what,
nevertheless,
200 miles an hour at the Enzo?
yeah,
Yeah,
funny.
not too shabby. I wouldn't be complaining.
Yeah,
Too-
exactly. But I think Ferrari are always looking for that perfection, right? Or the ultimate um, version of their car when they make these limited series cars. So, and it's supposed to be a marriage between motorsport, Formula One in particular, motorsport in general, and the road car. This is supposed to display all their ultimate technology. And I think that bit they kind of did their best, but probably wasn't their best in terms of the way they finally turned out. But it's still a great looking car, and I think it's aged really well. I think recently I saw one at Joe Macari recently, and it just looks great in person. I think you can spend a lot of time looking at that car, which
Yeah,
in pictures it
especially
again
on
doesn't
the
come
road
across.
as well, out in the wild. You see one. I saw one at Blenheim Palace last year, and that wasn't on the road. It was just sort of driving along the lawn, and it's just like a UFO has landed. That people swarm around it. The guy inside was just like he's about 80 or 90 years old, and he was revving the hell out of it in the car park. I was like, what a legend! He must be loving life. But yeah. Yeah, the Enzo, I think, has aged really, really well. When it launched, I wasn't really a fan. Like, obviously, got 650 horsepower V12 screaming car, technologically cutting edge at the time. Um, but yeah, in pictures, it just didn't do it for me. But in person, it's something else. But the thing with the Enzo is, I think time hasn't been very kind to it in terms of the tech, has it? Because it was in that period where that F1 gearbox was the pinnacle sports cars and hypercars. Nobody else was really venturing down that road. But obviously now we've got DCT boxes that change gear in 80 milliseconds or whatever, and it starts to make the Enzo look a bit silly. But I mean, it's an event, isn't it? I'm sure Enzo owners don't care too much that their gearbox isn't as smooth or as quick as they'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the gearbox is kind of a cross between what we have now and the manual cars. So I think you still have to treat it more like
robotized
a manual.
manual.
Yeah, and I think you have to like take your foot off the throttle and then change gear to make it smoother and so on.
I had a look underneath an Aston Vantage with their robotized manual, and it's basically just a hydraulic actuator changing gear for you when you pull a paddle. So it's really crude, but I mean they got it working pretty well, at least for the technology.
I think Ferrari were the first ones to use paddle shift for their road cars to change gears. I think in the mid-90s with the F355, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think they introduced it first before anybody else. Like many things, I mean, Ferrari generally are not known that much for bringing technology on, but when you do look at their history books, you find they have done a lot of smaller things with their road cars and in Formula One as well. So you need to give them some credit. For example, I mean, one of the things I read about Ferrari is that one of the things they didn't want is to have the wiper showing, the windscreen wiper showing on part of the overall body shape of the car, which back then it was, they were all sticking out. So they designed, I think it was the F355 or even the 348 maybe, or the Testarossa, one of these cars, to hide the windscreen wiper underneath the bonnet, so it doesn't actually ruin the shape of the car. That's how paranoid they were about, ruining the shape of their car. And of course they don't like wings or anything.
I have to take away some of the glamour, because I think the Austin Princess had the same thing, the obscured windscreen wiper signals.
But obviously it didn't catch on with supercars, because they were just, I mean, the Countach one, I mean, the Countach wiper looks great, but I mean, it is a bit fussy. I don't know if it's a huge wiper. I don't know if you've seen it. It's almost longer than a man's arm, it's like massive thing. It's hilarious, but I mean, that's a work of engineering, really. It doesn't work properly, but the way they've done it is quite hilarious. Especially when you see it in motion, the way it moves. Yeah, but that's a different topic. One day we can do a podcast on Lamborghini. I'd like to do one, because I think Lamborghini is an interesting company.
Is just mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Lamborghini, obviously, you got the fierce rivalry with Ferrari, but again, what sets Ferrari apart is that you got the combination of things. So you got the racing heritage, you've got the car performance and capability, like in their road car program, and you've just got that how special something feels, the styling. I know you can bang on about lap times and 0 to 60 and performance figures, but at the end of the day, it's about when you jump in a car on the road, you drive it, how it communicates with you, how it talks to you, and how special it makes you feel. Like at the end of the day, you're not going to care if it's 0.2 slower to 60 than another car if it makes you feel that bit more special. And I think Ferrari and Lamborghini in that respect really have nailed it. But Ferrari, I think, have been more consistent with the performance of the cars and how nice they are to use on the road. Because I mean, I've never driven a Lamborghini. Maybe one day for one of my reviews. But from what I've read, they're wide, they're horrible things. The new cars obviously better with the Huracan, like smaller dimensions, proper twin clutch box, but they look like a right handful on the road in the wrong hands.
For me, I've spoken to somebody who owned a Testarossa and a Countach. So these were obviously the great rivals in the 80s, Countach and Testarossa. And he said that the Countach I think he said it was a more better car to drive, more fun, not better, but much more fun car to drive. But I think it's a car that you have to spend a lot of time with to get to know before you can exploit it, because that underneath that, although the car is a supercar on the outside, underneath that is basically a race car.
Yeah, it's a space frame, isn't it? Amazing.
Yeah, space frame, and it's got rose joint suspension. So if you're not a competent driver, if you're just an average driver, you are going to struggle to drive that car. And secondly, you need to also warm the car. This is an old school engine, an old school car, so you need to warm it up properly, then get to know the car, and then drive the car. You're not going to be able to drive that car just jumping in and thinking, okay, let's go and go for a drive. You can do that with the Testarossa. Testarossa is easier to do that with, But the Countach, it's a car that it takes a long time to get to know, not 1 or 2 days. You have to really, it's almost like getting to know a person. So when you see
but
critical reviews,
I think that's really something that is satisfying about driving, and something that's really missing from newer cars. Because I recently drove the F90 M5, the BMW, and that's got just under 600 horsepower, four-wheel drive, and it's just under 2 tons. And if you gave those specs back in 70s and 80s, you would think, right, that car is a death trap. But you get into this, you've got electric power steering with basically no feedback, and it's so light and easy, automatic gearbox, smooth changes, and you can just literally put your foot to the floor at any point, even coming out of like a tight second gear corner or whatever, and the thing will just hook up and go, and you don't have to do anything. And if you leave the systems on, you've got the hand of God basically helping you around each corner, so you can't really go wrong. But yeah, in that respect, I think modern cars are just, the performance capability is outstanding. Even if you jump in a Fiesta today, take it around a circuit, you'd be shocked at what a standard Fiesta can do. But
I mean, look at the AMG A45. I mean, that's like, if you take the limiter off, I think you do 170 or 180 miles.
Yeah, exactly. That is, it's unreal, isn't it?
I mean, that's like 288 GTO or Testarossa, in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like ridiculous, and that's just a super hatch or sports hatch.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and that's available for what, 50,000 pounds.
Yeah, plenty of guys leasing those at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah, plenty of them. Yeah, you can see them up and down Sloane Street. Just AMG, it's just it's just ruining Sloane Street at the moment. I think those people who are outside of London or outside of UK, Sloane Street is the car meet center for us Londoners, where supercars used to meet up. I don't think it happens anymore because of the police and the AMG guys ruining everything. Sorry, AMG guys, but that is the case. It's just making a racket for everyone and just ruining it for all of us. But let's get back to Ferrari.
Yeah.
So what else is there? I mean, we got the history of Ferrari with their motorsport, their supercars, and the personalities as well. The people who bought them, and Enzo Ferrari himself, he had this mystique around him, and he created this mystique. And the brand, even today, still has this mystique. You can't just, the special series cars, you can't just go in and buy one. You could have all the money in the world. You could even have loads of Ferraris, but unless you get invited, you can't have one. I think one really famous example is that there's a collector in America who has some of the most expensive Ferraris in the world. I'm talking tens of millions of pounds, but he's put them in like a mall or like an arcade or something. And he never got invited for the La Ferrari, and he got I think apparently he got angry over it, and he decided to sue Ferrari over it, and he lost that. He either lost that case or he later dropped the case because I think he realized he couldn't win against a company who didn't want to sell him a product. But
I mean, that's a bit strange, isn't it? You have never hear of somebody taking you to court for not selling you something or not wanting you to buy something.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what happened. Ferrari are really picky about the people they sell their cars to. It's not necessarily about money. It's basically one of the rules that, as I understand it, is not just you have to buy certain low, like the entry level cars or some of the other models, the regular models, but also you have to drive the car as well. They want to see their cars on the road. So if you're just going to put them in a garage, you're less likely to get another one, offer to buy another one. That's how I understand it.
But these cars are made to be driven, especially the newer stuff. I mean, in the old days when you were on carbs and things were temperamental and difficult, you can sort of understand that you take the car out very, very, not very frequently. But in the modern day, I mean, every car is a turnkey car, and every car like is perfectly usable nearly on the public road. So yeah, there's no excuse really for leaving a LaFerrari or like a Pista locked away in a garage. They're meant to be driven. I mean, the test drivers, they haven't put all their blood, sweat, and tears into a car for you to just have it as a centerpiece in your garage. You know what I mean? It needs to be used. You need to see the fruits of that engineering, the great engines, the great chassis.
And what's the point of buying it if you're just going to leave it there? You might as well get a poster or a model. You know what I
Buy
mean?
a model, yeah. Go on Auto Art website and buy one. It's much cheaper as well.
Yeah, you could buy one of those amalgam models, yeah, that costs 8 grand, which is literally like the real thing, but just miniature. You know,
Yeah,
they
I've
scan
had a
a
look at
real
it.
car and they make it for you. So just go and buy one of those. I've seen them, they're really good. So go and buy one of those. They cost you about 8 grand, it's a lot cheaper. But I think a lot of people buy these cars as investments, and that's the part of the problem.
Yeah,
And they've obviously there's Ferrari, and the investment market has gone crazy. I mean, it's become like art now. It's like people got specialists who understand every single, you know, chassis number. You know, they can look
yeah.
at a car and tell you the chassis number and the value and the history from it. It's virtually like art. Ferrari has tried to clamp down on it on one level, and sometimes I think even encouraged it on another level. Where, I mean, Ferrari yearbook, for example, I don't know if you've read any of them, but there has been recent ones where they almost talk about Ferrari as an investment, and they tell you the values, and it's charts showing the value of the, you know, how much they're
Really?
going to. Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's quite funny, but they've also tried to clamp down on it in the past, where the F50, when that came out, to stop speculators buying the car, you couldn't actually buy an F50. So what you do, you get an invitation if you're one of the lucky 349 people to get invited to buy one. You get a letter saying that there's an offer for you to buy one. You have to lease it for 2 years. So you put down a down payment. I think it might be like 50% of the value of the car. You lease it for 2 years. Then every month you pay, I think it was $5,000
Yeah.
towards the cost of every month. And then at the end, you have the option to put down a final payment to actually purchase the car. So until then, you couldn't. The car was not yours; it was Ferrari. You were just leasing it. So
Wow.
yeah, that's an interesting story. So, but on the other level, they do want to create. They want to control the market. I think they did that. They don't want the value of the cars to just crash. So they're controlling the value of the cars. And that's part of the demand as well. I mean, that's what the demand has always been high for Ferrari. They've always got a pent up demand for their cars, as opposed to other cars with just dropping value. I mean, 675 LT, when that came out, that was above that market value or initial sale price. Now, as far as I know, it's below the retail price, or maybe hovering around the retail price.
Yeah, I think
As
it's
a
hovering around. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a way of controlling the market. And also, one of the things that Ferrari does is they always make less cars than the actual demand. So if they
Mm.
think they could sell 350 cars, they sell 349. So there's always going to be the 350 person who could not get their car. Next
Will
time
be
when a
the
new one
first.
comes out, they'll be saying, "You give it to me first." You know, that they'll be queuing up for it, and it's first in the queue for the next hypercar or supercar or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. So and they've always done this, by the way. Enzo used to never sell cars just because you had a checkbook open. You know, you're ready to write a check out for their cars. He would actually, as far as I remember, with early cars, you had to basically go and ask him, "Can I buy your car?" And then he would say, if he thought he was worthy enough, he'll sell your car. Especially with the V12 cars, I think that's the way he operated. Um,
That's
so
a good way of doing it though, because it means that you're, well, more often than not, selling to the right people. I mean, we had that thing, didn't we, with the Ford GT, the new one, um, where I think Ford said there was a contract that you can't sell the car within 2 years of buying it. I think John Cena went and sold his before the contract ended. So yeah, it can be a bit hit or miss, but yeah, I do like that they go to the right people. It makes it personal, doesn't it? You've got to be not a Ferrari person, but you've got to be a car person to be sold one of the special Ferraris. And yeah, and that probably boosts the values as well, because you've got to be a car person. If you're not a car person, you're going to have to spend, well, twice list price to get one in a lot of cases. So yeah,
and
it keeps the
it
right people
actually
in the right cars.
it increases the value of the car and the demand for the car, and the next one that comes along. So it's a long-term view. So you could argue that they're taking a short-term hit because they could probably sell more cars. They could have sold, you know, 500 F50s rather than 349, and made more money in the short term. But over the long term, when it comes to the Enzo and the LaFerrari, they were able to sell more of those, you know. So, and the value of those cars have been retained. So if you are spending £1 million on a LaFerrari, you know that in a year, 2 years, 10 years, you're still going to get your £1 million back at the minimum, you know. And if you're most likely, you're going to make, you know, 50% or whatever is at it, or 100%, depending on where you are at the time
Yeah,
of the year and stuff like that. But yeah, so you're always going to maintain a demand for your cars. You're always going to maintain value for your cars, and it has a knock-on effect on the lower end products or the entry-level products. Because if the LaFerrari is going for this much, and then the Pista, you know, it's a limited series car, but it's a limited run car, it's not a numbered car, you're still going to get a demand for it, and people are going to be interested in it because of the cachet with the LaFerrari and the association with, it's a limited series car. So they're doing a good job at that, which is different to, say, McLaren. Again, I keep bringing up McLaren and you keep bringing up McLaren, but that is the direct rival for Ferrari. There isn't, I mean, you got Aston Martin, which is a direct rival, but I think they are one step behind in their performance. When the DBS Superleggera was launched, one of the spokespeople for Aston, somebody working for Aston Martin said that it's as fast as an F12, but the A12 was already on the market. So I don't know, they're that one step behind.
Yeah, like the DBS, I think they benchmarked the torque figures. They said it makes more torque across, I think, half the rev range or more than the 812. So yeah, that Ferrari have always been the benchmarks, I think. Not always. I mean, if you look back to 2011 when the 12C came out and the 720S from McLaren more recently, I think they've moved the game on in terms of performance. But in terms of what you'd like to use on the road, I still think Ferrari is probably the more exciting car. But obviously McLaren, being a British company, they're tuned very nicely for UK roads. I mean, they're supple. They've got that hydraulically cross-link suspension, which can give really good ride comfort while giving the support that you need for driving hard. So, and they've got hydraulic steering as well, which is nice. But it's just the specialness of Ferrari to me, for all the dynamic qualities of McLaren, I just couldn't turn away from a Ferrari dealership, to be honest.
I think
McLaren also, they highlight a lot where Ferrari does things right, actually. I mean, with releasing special cars or replacement cars so frequently and doing updates as they do at McLaren, I think it devalues the previous car instantly, and yeah, it just makes getting into a new McLaren not such a good proposition when you're going to lose loads of money when they release a new one. So
for me, the closest rival and the most emotive and evocative and mystique as well is Lamborghini. I think Lamborghini have, they got the brand, they got the history also with Ferrari. I mean, Lamborghini came about because of Ferrari. Ferruccio got into a bit of a tiff with Enzo, and Enzo said, go and make a better car if you can. So he decided to do that. And then also the engine, Bizzarini engine. Bizzarini worked for Ferrari. He was behind the 250 GTO project, which was, 250 GTO is the world's most expensive car ever sold. So
didn't Ferruccio name the 350 GT the 350 GT just because it's a number higher than the 250? Is that
I don't know about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did that. But I'm so glad that Enzo told him to go and make a better car, because that 350 was actually probably a better. I think as far as it is a better car than the 250, both in terms of engine. It hadn't produced more power, and as generally as a car, it is a better car from what I've heard. So I'm glad he did that. And then also we've got the Miura after that. We got the Countach, the Diablo, and Murcielago with that Bizzarini engine. Again, Bizzarini walked out because of Enzo's wife, because she kept interfering with the factory floor, and there was the walkout of, famously, Ferrari engineers and people working on the workshop walked out and said, you had to get rid of your wife yet. Not get rid of her like divorce her, get rid of her from the factory floor or the workshop floor, or we will walk out. And they all walked out, and Bizzarini went and designed this engine for Lamborghini. And no doubt there's a bit of Ferrari DNA in the Lamborghini engine.
And until 2010, that basic design has been used in some variation with the Murcielago SV. So you clearly did something right.
And that's one of the great Lamborghini. I mean, Murcielago SV is one of the great Lamborghinis ever. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, they only made 150. This was before the investment market took over. They were planning to make 300 and something, I think, and they only made about 150. So it's a bit of a shame that they want that many made. Although at one point in London, they seem to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Where at the time, there was like Murcielago SV. They were like everywhere. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but if I had known they were only going to make, they would only end up making 150. I probably would have appreciated it.
I think only something like 6 cars were fitted with a manual as well. So a manual SV, I think, is the ultimate modern expression of Lamborghinis. That just seems like a peach of a car. Probably not in London traffic, but if you're on a nice wide open road, that Bizzarini V12 and a manual gearbox, a stick to row around, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's
so in terms of the cars themselves, then, What sort of layout is your favorite over the years from Ferrari? Do you like the front engine cars, V12s, the mid engine ones, the special series? What is your?
This is really difficult for me. I've thought about this quite a lot, as you can imagine. I mean, from the historic cars, they're all front engine cars, right? So my favorite historic or classic car is the 275 GTB, which probably surprises a lot of people. Most people go for like 250 GTO or 250 California or 250 short wheelbase. For me, 275 is it's a prettier car. It's got cleaner lines. It's curvy, but not as curvy, and it's still inspired by a 250 GTO. So that, from a historic point of view, that's the car that I will take. It's a V12 as well, so it's a nice car. It's not like the Daytona, which is like a bit of a boxy, edgier car, and it's still got which is a little bit too boxy and not like the classic curvy cars, but it's not so curvy as the earlier cars. So it's like an in-between car. But my modern cars, for me, if you said to me, here's £2 million or £3 million, or buy whatever you want, but it has to be one Ferrari, it would have to be either an F12 TDF or LaFerrari.
Okay.
So they're limited edition cars. So you got the rarity, you got the motorsport heritage inspiration. So LaFerrari is the cross between the race cars and the road cars in one car. You got the curve system and everything. So it's like there's motorsport. But then you got the F12 TDF, which is based on the FXX program. They put the bits in from the FXX program in that car for the first time. So you got those two cars. Asking me to choose between those two is really difficult. I'll have to say LaFerrari just because it's a mid-engine V12.
Yeah, and it's a Halo car, isn't it?
It's a Halo car. It's very difficult though. It's very. I would have both if I had the money. But it's really I can't decide between the two. LaFerrari just has the edge because I think the rarity and the crazy styling as well, it's insane. I mean, to look at that car, when you see that car in person, the level of detail, the curvature of the car, the aero, you could see the aero that, almost see the aero flowing through the car and above the car and through it and underneath it and stuff like that. And it's F1 inspired. I know Ferrari people often sometimes make fun out of F1 and Ferrari, said, oh, everything's F1 related when it comes to Ferrari, but this is an F1 inspired car for sure. If you look at the drawings and the technology, the drawings that they did with that car and how the F1 technology was incorporated, F1 learning was incorporated within this car's design, you understand what I mean by that. But yeah, it's hard to choose between the two.
Energy recovery system and stuff. And
yeah,
it certainly is.
But even the central part of the LaFerrari is pretty much all inspired by F1 technology, like the curvature, the way the intakes and the outtakes behind the wheel arch and front of the wheel arch, and the air intakes for the engine is. Or if you look at when you open the doors of a LaFerrari, just look at how much the sills actually curve into the wheel arch. It's not straight; it completely curves in. So it's really interesting to look at.
And there's really interesting design choices in that as well. So like the seats don't come on runners, don't they? They have to be bolted to the tub, and you have to be fitted to it. And that's so that the driver can sit lower and you can have a smaller cockpit area for a smaller frontal area for better aero. So there's cool things like that. I love it when like a small decision can have knock-on effects with car performance and design and engineering like that, which is cool.
But also, it's the weight as well.
TDF. Yeah, the TDF is just a manic car to me. I'd love to have a go in one at some point. I've never driven anything close to a Ferrari, but if I was to drive one on a circuit, I think it'd be that, because I mean it's got a 285 section front tire, which is just unheard of. I know I think there's a Camaro ZL1 or something had a 305 section front tire, which is insane. But 205 section front tires with that much horsepower, like 770, 780 horsepower from a V12 to just the rear wheels, and with that much front end bite, it's that car I think would just be an absolute riot on a circuit, and a proper handful in a good way, I think.
Yeah, Ferrari designed it so that it will be a handful. You'd have to drive. You need. It's a driver's car. So I was talking to someone in Ferrari, and you could read about this as well for people who want to check it out. The V8 special cars, that's a car that's accessible to all types of drivers. So you don't need to be a highly skilled driver to exploit the performance of that car. Or at least that's the way they design it. When it comes to the front V12 special series cars, those cars are only for people who know what they're doing. So you can't, unless you're a highly skilled driver, you're not going to get offered that car, and it's not really designed for you. You will struggle to control that car. It's not something that anybody can just get in and just tune it, push it to the limits, and you'll be fine with it. It will scare you. That's the way they designed it.
Not many modern cars give you that, which I like. I like the fact that it's a proper challenge for a driver, because that's something that's missing from today's cars. I mean, you leave all the systems on and you might as well be driving a Prius for most of the time. So it's nice to have a car that actually challenges you. I think that's what I love about the TDF, is that you've got all that front end grip. It's so aggressive on setup, and you just steer it on the throttle like it's a Lister costing coupe from the yes, I just love the thing. Really,
yeah, it was designed to be unstable. I think, what was it, the Eurofighter or something was apparently
the
inspiration
for
behind
agility.
it.
It's the same thing, yeah.
So, and also 70% of that bodywork of that car is completely new, or pretty much every panel is new. Yeah, only
Even
the
the
A-pillar.
the rear windscreen is different from the F12, which is a huge change.
There's only the A-pillar and the doors are interchangeable with the F12. Apart from that, everything is different as far as I know. There's nothing interchangeable between those two cars. And of course, the engine is FXX based engine, so it's again completely different. It's a special engine. I mean, there were rumors going around that engine was, when it was first made, it was more powerful than the Ferrari engine. Obviously, Ferrari are never going to confirm that, but people inside Ferrari would know, and the rumor must have come from somewhere. But it's not far off it anyway, if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's within about 20 horsepower of it, so
yeah, so it's not that far off. Yeah, so it's pretty special. That's why it's hard to choose between a LAF and a F12 TDF. I think those two are the two halo cars of Ferrari right now. Yeah. And in terms of design, you got the SP Monza, which there's nothing on the market.
Have you seen one in person?
The SP Monza?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. I've seen the SP1 and the SP2.
No way.
Yeah, I saw.
This is I've thought about this before. What would you have, the SP1 or the SP2? For those who don't know, it's the single-seater monoposto, as it were, and the two-seater version of the same car.
Well, as a person who is single, I'll probably take the SP1. It's just, and I think I think they're going to be rarer as well. I don't know if they're going to be. There's a split between 50-50. I think 500 people were offered that car, and they had to choose between the SP1 and SP2, and you couldn't buy both. So I can see the SP2 being more common than the SP1, if that's the case. Like, you could only have one or the other. But if it's 50-50, then obviously it's not going to be that. It's an equal amount. But I think the SP1 is going to be a rarer car.
Yeah, I do like the idea though of bringing like a friend with you. I think part of the joy of cars and special cars is experiencing it with passengers. I mean, that's why I drive a 1972 Alfa Giulia, which is one of the original four-door sports saloons back in 1962. I just love the fact that it sounds amazing. It likes to slide around, but it's also got space for 4 people in comfort. So I can have the car packed full of friends, and we just go out hooning around in the mountains, like fully sideways. I just love the idea of that.
We need to do a video on that car when we can. I still haven't seen it, so hopefully we'll do a video and bring it to my viewers on my channel.
We could do that. Yeah, well up for that.
Yeah, it'd be cool to do that. What would you take then out of the Ferrari lineup?
So today's lineup, or from past as well?
Past, do one for the past, like classics, because you got 70 years to choose from, so choosing one is a bit difficult. But there's too many great cars. It's not like, they made just a handful of cool cars and just choose from them. They made quite a few great cars and cool cars. So choose one and choose one from the past, choose one from like 90s, and choose one from the present. Okay,
so from the past, I really have taken to the 365P, which is a 3-seater car with a middle seat like a McLaren F1. And 4.4 litre Colombo V12, really elegant styling. Really looks like nothing Ferrari were producing at the time. Obviously, it's got the same styling cues, but if you look at one, it's so long. The profile is so elegant, and I just think with that V12 and the ability to take two mates with you on like a GT tour down to the south of France, whatever, I just love the idea of that car, and it's unusual as well.
Did they make that? did they actually make that car, or was it just a concept car?
They made it, yeah, they
Okay.
did make it.
Because
So
I've seen the bug for that, the wooden bug. It was at the Ferrari 70th anniversary exhibition in London at the Design Museum, and
okay,
the bug was there. You could see it, but I didn't realize they actually made that car.
yeah, they made. I don't know how many they made, but I have seen them on videos and things, and yeah, I adore the idea of two mates with you, Colombo V12 behind your head, really elegant design, and just going on a tour somewhere. That car is just something else for me. And yeah, in terms of 90s cars, I do like the F50. I know some people aren't too keen on the styling, and I agree. It's not. I don't think it's one of their better efforts, but that F1 tech and the way it was built, the carbon tub, and a lot of people say obviously it's much better made than the F42, which is always good.
Yeah, I mean,
And yeah, manual transmission, screaming V12, open top. From the 90s, that is definitely my go-to.
I think the performance between the F40 and the F50 is not far off. They're quite close to each other
Mm. Yeah,
because the F40 apparently, although I think it's 480 odd brake horsepower
yeah,
officially,
yeah.
most of them are closer to 500.
Mhm.
So somewhat above 500. So it was, and the F50 is 520. So they're not too far off. And
Right.
you got that heavier V12. But I
Yeah,
think the drivability of the V12 non-turbocharged engine compared to the F40 turbocharged is obviously very different. And the 80s
yeah,
boost when it
yeah.
came on, it really came on. So it's
Exactly. It's
completely
funny
different.
now. Nowadays, you've got like short intake lengths and variable vane turbos and things like that that just make it pretty much instant. I mean, it's not absolutely immediate these days with turbochargers, but it's very close. And it's funny to look back then and think that the naturally aspirated car, although it's a bigger capacity, is more drivable and has more torque low down in most situations than the twin turbo V8 F40. So yeah, times have changed
But
quite.
the F40 did save Ferrari. I mean, there was, I mean, at that time when the Ferrari was around, they weren't really doing that well. I mean, people don't know this, but Ferrari was virtually on the verge of bankruptcy. And
Mm,
they were only planning to make a few hundred F40s, but the demand was so great, being Enzo's last car that he's actually signed off everywhere, and Ferrari going back to his roots, there was a huge demand for it, and they ended up making 1300, around 1300, I believe. And that car pretty much saved Ferrari, bankrolled Ferrari for the 90s. I mean, at that time, you had the 348. I think when the 348 was still around in production, that car had a really bad reputation. I mean, by
yeah,
the end of production, the GTB version of that car was actually supposed to be quite good, and the Spider was supposed to be quite good, but the 348 TB kind of ruined the whole 348 series. Really,
yeah,
nobody
exactly.
wanted it. It was so
Ruined the
unstable.
reputation.
It would just spin around. Apparently, I mean, even I think pretty much all the journalists agree that that car was, it's not a good car, but the GTB version of that car is really good, and the Spider
Mm.
version is supposed to be good. And then
Even De Montezemolo didn't like it. The
yeah,
three
he said it
four.
was rubbish.
Yeah, so
And he
that's
said
what
it
you
was
need
that
to know.
he pretty much said it's he used the four-letter word beginning with C, I think. Don't quote me on that, but apparently that's pretty much what he said. And then he had them redesign the back end of the car. The suspension was re-engineered. That's how you got the GTV. So that kind of saved the 348's reputation. But I think by that time it was already within, people had made up their mind about that car. I think there's only like 9 GTBs in this country. I mean, it's such a low production car. There's not that many in the UK. See it. There's 348. There's a lot of 348s, but it's not the GTB version of that car. There's not that many.
Mm,
He didn't sell
yeah,
that many. And then he also decided to revamp Ferrari from the road car. So he reintroduced the front engine GT car with the 456.
yeah.
That's the first front engine GT car since Daytona. Then they did the 550 Maranello, again another front engine car,
Mm,
which took away the competition slightly with Lamborghini, because until then they were both mid-engine supercars racing against
mm,
each other.
yeah, yeah.
You don't really see that anymore. You don't really see Lamborghini going head to head with Ferrari in magazines. I mean, I don't know how many people still read magazines, but I haven't seen a cover where Lamborghini and Ferrari are going head to head with their
Yeah.
ultimate supercar, V12 supercars.
I
I
think
don't
the
know if you've
last
seen
one
it.
I saw was 2014 when Evo did a test of Aventador against F12. But even then, they are drastically different cars in conception and to drive as well. So there hasn't really been a proper head-to-head yet.
I remember Evo did a magazine where they took the Diablo SV versus the F50 550 Maranello to Monaco. I mean,
Oh,
again, they're very different cars, but they actually did the test
yeah,
completely. I mean, the obviously the Diablo SV looks better in pictures. I mean, that car looks amazing, especially around the streets of Monaco and the harbor and stuff. But the 550 is probably the better car to drive, you know. So
yeah, yeah.
the
So from
SV is a
today
bit.
then, talking
Sorry.
about so from the cars of today, what I would have, yeah, so I really, really like the styling of the Roma. I think that's such a good direction for, especially because the car's meant to be a usable, almost everyday sort of proposition. I think the styling direction with that is really nice because understated. And if you're driving something every day, you don't want it to be too flashy. I mean, some people might want that, but for me personally, I like a car that's a bit understated and has sort of a subtler beauty to it. So I do love the Roma, but I would have to have a V12 if I was going to buy a modern day Ferrari. So if they could ever make a Roma, like sort of similar sort of design to the Roma with a V12 in it, I think that would be my ultimate car. I would love one of those. But as it stands, I'd probably have to go with maybe an 812 GTS because I like the idea of an open top. And I know it's probably not as stiff because they still use that aluminium structure. Um, but yeah, an open top with that sound and just on a nice road, like the noise bouncing off mountains and how much faster it would feel with the roof off. I think that would be the ultimate road car for me.
And I think the GTS it looks better than the Superfast.
I think so too.
Yeah, it's just, and also I've heard the F812 Superfast start up straight after or just before an F12 TDF, so they were pretty much next to each other, or like in the same
Where
room.
we heard this, by the way?
Oh, this was Mr. JWW's NVN
Oh, okay,
yeah
okay.
car meet. So it was a closed car meet, so it wasn't for everyone. But I think you had to just basically sign up to a sheet online ticket thing, and you just basically were able to go, but you couldn't just turn up. But as I understand it, but anyway, I managed to get in, and somebody started up the 812 and revved the hell out of it. And then one of my friends requested Mr. JWW to start up his F12 TDF. So he went and got his keys. I don't know, his keys must have been somewhere else, but it took him 5 minutes to get it. He had to run somewhere to get it. He came back, and he was bearing in mind this was a really bad day. It was raining, and the wind was all over the place.
Yeah.
So he must have, I think he went outside to get it. But so it's really nice of him to do that. And came back in, started up and really revved the F12 out. I mean, like he was really going for it. It was a redlining it, but he was still giving it some. I mean, there's oil coming out on his clean NVN floor. So it was pretty much giving it. And yeah, the 812 starts better on startup.
Yeah.
The F12 when you're revving it out starts better.
Nice.
Pretty,
I bet that sounded insane indoors. Was it indoors?
yeah, it was indoors. Yeah. Yeah, he did it indoors. So yeah, he made his floor dirty, pristine floor. I mean, we've seen the videos of NVN London. It's pristine, right? You know, it's like Apple, like he calls it. It's like Apple for cars. So on the same day, somebody also started up an event to the SVJ as well. So I got to hear 3 V12 legendary V12 start out. So it's pretty cool.
And there's a Stratos there as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, there. For those people who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a video of this event when I went to it. It's a short video, but go and check it out if you want to know what we're talking about. I'll leave a link somewhere in the video in the description below. Yeah, so there was a Stratos there as well. People said that was the coolest car there because it's so unusual to see
I
a
agree.
real Stratos. You know, even a replica is pretty rare, but an actual Stratos is pretty
Stratos
cool
is the
thing.
dream, man. One day, hopefully,
yeah.
if I can gather the funds.
Yeah, I mean, and that originally started off with a Ferrari Dino engine as well. So bringing back to Ferrari, and this is where Ferrari has been like, you know, it just shows the influence of Ferrari as that. Obviously, influence with Lamborghini, which also led to Pagani with when he went independent. So you got that had knock-on effect. You got the Stratus with the Ferrari engine, and the V12, the general use of V12 engines. All of this is all because of Ferrari, really. Enzo Ferrari, his vision and the what he created has led to what we have today, all of this stuff. So I think this what makes Ferrari so special as a brand. And that's why today it is the most powerful brand in the world. Although obviously the Formula One, the motorsport heritage it's part of that as well. So it's 50-50. Ferrari always say it's 50-50. So today, Ferrari is now the most valuable brand in the world. It's the most powerful brand in the world. They've got theme parks and all sorts of things going on. You know, Abu Dhabi, Ferrari World. I think they got one opening up in Spain, or there was talk of one in Spain. So, you know, they've become so much more than just it's one make or one, you know, one type of car manufacturer. I mean, that's what makes them special, I think.
Yeah, definitely. They've got a huge, I think, unrivaled influence on the industry. You've got obviously groundbreaking cars like from other manufacturers that have come over the years, but in terms of lasting impact, I think Ferrari has always had that standing at the top of the tree, really. And yeah, I'm not a fan of all of their cars, I have to say. Some of them I don't really understand, but in general, Ferrari, if it's got a Ferrari badge, it's going to be special in one way or another, even if it's a Mondial.
Yeah, I was just about even the Mondial. I mean, the first Mondial. I mean, it looks awful. I mean, I think by the time they did I think it's a 3.8 or 3.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, they cleaned it up a little. I mean, the styling they cleaned up a little bit. That silly
And they
intake
improved
was
the
dealt
car,
with.
didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they had a different, better engine, and also that silly intake on the side was, you know, polished off a bit, and so it kind of smoothed the car off. So they managed to do a good job. I mean, apparently that car is actually supposed to be quite good to drive. It's not a track car or a supercar. It's meant to be like a tourer, a mid-engine tourer. So it's a four-seater. So it's supposed to be a comfortable car. They even had a Valeo option. I don't know if you know what that is. Do you know what that? So Valeo option is basically, it was developed originally for Gianni Agnelli, who couldn't use his left leg to use the clutch. So they designed a process for it. I think he had an F40 and he wanted to drive an F40, but he couldn't use the clutch. So they designed a Valeo for him. So a clutchless gear shift, basically. That's what it is. And that was the only F40 as far. I think it was an F40 or a Testarossa. I think it's both cars. He had a Testarossa made like that, a Testarossa Spider and an F40. Both those cars were made for him. And then for general public, the Mondial was offered with a Valeo system where, again, it's clutchless.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think Mercedes did that. Not recently, but with an A-Class, they had a clutchless manual gear shift. Never really caught on, but that's quite interesting. I remember when I was younger, I used to watch my parents driving and thinking, I would hate to use the clutch on every gear shift. Why can't I just have a clutchless manual? When I was about like 6 or 7 years old, and then so I guess I need to give him a call then, don't I? For one of his...
Yeah. I don't know how easy it was to use, but I mean, Gianni Agnelli was a big Ferrari fan. Even before Fiat took over Ferrari, he was still buying. He financed Ferrari from the very beginning. He had a 166 Barchetta with twin colors, so it was blue on top and I think green at the bottom. It's a unique spec. It looks absolutely stunning. I've seen that car 2 or 3 times now, so it is a stunning car. I saw it last year at Hampton Court, the last time I saw it. It stands out in the sun. It looks great. So there's only like 30 of those cars made, and he's one of the first people to do it. And he had special cars made by Ferrari. You know, back then you could have your own body put on your car, so he had his own bodies put on his car. So he's always a Ferrari fan, and obviously it makes sense to do this one-off clutchless system for him on his Testarossa if he wanted one. But Ferrari have done stuff like that before with Niki Lauda as well. They made a special GTO for him. So when production ended for the GTO, Niki Lauda, for those people who don't know, who used to drive for the Formula One cars, had a bit of a falling out with Enzo, as pretty much everybody seems to have with Enzo. But they became friends again, which again seems to happen quite often before Enzo. This was just a few years before Enzo died. And when they became friends, Niki said, "Can you give me a GTO? I want a GTO." And by that time, production had ended. So Enzo said, "Yeah, we'll make you one. Don't worry about that. Production's ended, but we'll sort it out for you." So Fiat bought half the cost for that car, and Ferrari bought half the cost of the car, and they made a one-off GTO for him. Wow. So yeah, it's crazy. And they put the sports exhaust on it, which is like very different. It's like the old Formula One exhaust that looks like a trumpet. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, it was a white trumpet coming out. So it had sports exhaust on it as well.
Inconel coating.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it helps when you're friends with the old man and they do special things like that.
Titles with him. Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah, but they do Ferrari do stuff like, I mean, do stuff like this for their very special clients or the people that they like. I mean, you got the SP project cars and stuff like that as well coming along. You know, you could design the car with Ferrari designers and make one-off car for you with them. It has to be a Ferrari, of course. You can't just design it like a Lamborghini, but it is, you know, it is a special project to be involved in designing your own car. So, anyway, I think we've been going on for a while now, and I don't want to bore. I'd not bore people, but I think it's too much for one podcast to talk about Ferrari. I mean, we could do an entire series on this. We can talk about it for days on end, read books and so on. But I think we should end it here. I think you said that your favorite Ferrari is it's a mid La Ferrari, right? Was that? Did you say that?
From today, the 812 GTS.
Oh, 812 GTS. Sorry, yeah. Mine is a La Ferrari between the F12 and F12 GDF and the La Ferrari, but it's a La Ferrari. Yeah. So those are our favorite cars. I would like to know what they would choose in terms of their favorite cars, whether it's a classic and a modern and a classic. What would you choose? It'd be nice to know what the viewers or listeners think. I would also like to say thank you to Yousuf for joining me in this podcast. I think it's great that you joined me. I could have talked Ferrari all day by myself, but it's nice to have somebody else to talk to. Yousuf is a YouTuber. He's also a writer, as you said earlier in the podcast. Yousuf, do you want to just give people your YouTube details, your Instagram, or anything else that you're on Facebook? Just let us know what it is so we can.
So I'm Ashraf on Cars, on everything basically. So Instagram, Ashraf on Cars, Twitter, Ashraf on Cars, Facebook as well. And my YouTube channel is called Ashraf on Cars as well. I upload reviews and I do little project videos. I've got a Lancia Fulvia project car that's currently ongoing. That's just had its interior fitted, which I've done a video on. So we've got a series on that. We've got older cars coming up, reviews and twin tests and things like that. So a lot in the works on that at the moment. So if you want to keep up to date with those videos, then hit subscribe.
You've also got a really nice Giulia as well, which is one of my favorite cars that I've seen a YouTuber own. That's actually your car as well. So go and check that out for his channel. The Lancia that he's talking about it's on your screen that you're looking at right now, the red one that he's standing next to. So that's the project car. So if you're wondering why you're looking at this, car that needs to have some work on it, it's because he's actually working on it. It's not just there because he couldn't find another picture. And yeah, so check him out. Also, check out his article on Drive Nation. I think it's worth looking at. It's about his Giulia. So I think this is it. I think thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much, everybody at home, for listening to this podcast. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully, you guys have as well, and we hopefully bring more of these type of podcasts to you. If you have any suggestions on the type of topics or improvements to this podcast, please let me know. This is the first time I'm doing it, so there's lots to learn, obviously. And once again, thank you very much. I'll see you in the future, hopefully. Take care. Bye.
See you next time.